Chapter 3, Seasons of Change. The job that Randy offered me lasted about a year. One day, soon after that vacation, as we stacked hay at a dairy, he knocked me off the haystack as we unloaded our haul. This was the very next thing to happen to me. I was about 16 feet off the ground when the loader's truck winch locked up while sending a bale up to me on a hook. The hook hit the end of the boom and the bale flew off at a high rate of speed, and at about 200 pounds, I took the momentum. It stopped when it hit me square in the chest and I was knocked off the stack. I was slightly off balance by the time I hit the ground. When I left the stack, I was parallel to the ground on my back in midair. From that position, I worked hard to land on my feet, and at the same time, I had to throw the hooks away from me as I was instructed to do if this scenario happened. I almost landed right as I flapped my arms like a bird. My right heel took most of the impact. I possibly landed on a rock in the mud and shattered it into 4 pieces. After I hit the ground, I tried to stand up but fell face first into the mud. So now I smelled of cow shit and was completely covered in mud and shit. I took that with me to the hospital. After my stay in the hospital, as I recovered, I started to go to the library again while I was in the cast, and there I studied up on mining for gold and gemology again. I couldn't take the bouncing in the semi because of a pin in my heel that stuck out of the back of it and through the bottom. I tried to ride with Randy, but the pain was too much, so I was forced to stay home 24/7 with his girlfriend, who didn't work and was there all the time. This made me adamant to escape from the situation even more so. When the cast finally came off, I then asked Randy to take me back to that spot on Nofus Creek where I could recover rather than to sit there any longer. He complied with my respect. I sold my car, I bought a pistol of my own, and a variety of new camping gear and supplies. I wish I knew all of this would happen before I accepted his offer to move to Southern California. I was going to go solo into the wilderness, and I could stay there till I could get rid of the crutches and walk out on my own. That was the plan anyway. I had a walking cane for the transition from crutches when the time came to try that. The town that was the closest to the area was Hayfork at 18 miles away. I knew what I would be facing after losing the crutches. There would be lots of pain trying to walk out of the deep woods to that town when I could attempt it. But I would put up with anything to get away from them, and I knew that's how it would play out. This would be my greatest challenge, but when I would be able to do that was unknown. I didn't know if all the motion in my foot would return, as I was told by my doctor that it might not, and I would probably have a limp for the rest of my life. I didn't know what else I was going to experience or see there, but I knew somehow that I would, just like that winter. I guess my subconscious wanted to see what else I might experience there. What I didn't expect was how much I would find out, and how much I would experience while tuning my skills and my senses. Some of this would come naturally through deprivation. My senses would increase exponentially, particularly in my hearing. What I didn't know is I would be tied to this area in the very near future for 7 years and witness even more than I could ever imagine. It was May when Randy took me back up to Indian Valley area, left me there alone And in my mind, when they finally left, I was so relieved to see them go. I thought they couldn't have left soon enough. They were supposed to resupply me in about 2 months with more food and help me to town, but that never happened. After they left, I never seen them again. I knew this somehow anyway, and thank God I was prepared for that scenario. I just fucking knew. It was a serene spot in the spring and a very interesting place with exotic plants and lizards I had never seen before. I found geoids again, but as with the others from winter, there were no gems inside them, just quartz crystals. I tried to pan for gold, but at that time but even with book knowledge, I couldn't find a speck. My attempts were futile. You really need someone that's knowledgeable to show you some basics first, and then it becomes easy with practice, and you can actually produce results, knowing what to expect. I never knew if I was doing it right. For me, that wouldn't happen till much later. There were a few strange things that happened there. There was one night when I just got into my sleeping bag and I heard something coming down the side of the hill, crashing through the brush. As it walked by my tent, it suddenly stopped and growled. All I could do was to reach for my pistol and cock it. The animal must have known the sound of a gun, or at that point smelled the gunpowder residue, and it then crossed the creek to the other side, leaving me alone. I suspected a bear, but it could have been that cougar that tracked us that spring, or maybe something else. I noticed after about a month, my hearing and sense of smell improved immensely. I could hear the tiniest of birds at great distances, animals, deer, and other creatures. I could hear planes coming for miles before I would ever catch a glimpse of them. I soon realized that this vast improvement and was happy with it. I also was able to read the ground and know when an animal or bird had been there with ease, especially the place where my food was stored. There were 2 occasions I had to move my food cache into new areas and restash it because of it being discovered by small mammals. No real harm done, but if I left it there, they would have figured out how to get into it. I was as tuned into nature as I could be, just as the Native Americans had been known for and famous for. I now understood why they loved their lifestyle. They had no need to change much. Materialism didn't take over and plague their lives, and so they fought for that lifestyle. But for me, one thing that was bad, and I believe no one could handle for long, is the loneliness of one. There came a time when I would need to leave simply because of that, and I was running out of food. I had not heard a human voice in months, and I sort of forgot what that was like. But the great thing of living in the woods was being in God's true natural church, which was in a sense a gift. No wonder they called it Trinity County in God's country. I even thought to myself many times that if there wasn't a winter here, I could stay out here all year round like this. Why live in a house? While there, I wondered a lot on why things worked out the way they did for me. It seemed like I was always being thrown off to the side every time I thought I had found my niche, or when I thought I would retire from a certain job in the future. But each time I found I was wrong. It was weird. Everyone I knew did this, found this, but not me. I would camp there for about 3.5 months before making it to Hayfork. It took 6 attempts to walk out before my heel could handle it. The pain that I felt each time I tried to walk out was excruciating, and it would take days to try again. During this time, there were only two more strange things that happened to me at that spot. And I don't know if it was because I had not heard a human voice in a long while, or if there was more to the ground than what is known in the books. What I heard one day at about 8 feet in front of me as I gazed at a hill was one voice said, "Who's that?" Another answered, "That's just Mike." It was plain as if two people were standing in front of you and speaking. I had a full view of the area, and there was no place for a person to hide without me seeing them. If someone was there, I would have heard them leaving the area. It was the strangest thing, because as tuned in as I was, as clear as those voices were, and it emanated just a few feet in front of me, I could see no one. There was absolutely no doubt in my mind that the voices were right there in front of me, standing directly in front of me, at about 5 to 10 feet away, but I could not see them. No way was my next thought, but I know I heard it with my ears. It was amazing and confusing at the same time. I thought, once again, there was something more going on there, something hidden from my sight, and my impression was that it stopped when they knew I had heard them. I soon forgot about that and just chalked it up to my longing for a human voice. I started to feel the change in the air, and autumn would be here soon. Each time I left, I thought that I would run into somebody that would give me a ride, but the problem was I didn't see anyone anywhere any of the time I was walking out, no matter how far I made it. After trying, I would have to recover for a few days, and I would go to the cliffs to eat lunch. If you look at the picture where I'm sitting at the cliff's edge, notice my shoes, how one foot did more work than the other. You can tell by the dust on them. There is something else in that picture. It's blue and large, and I haven't got a clue as to what it is, and I didn't know for sure that I captured it on film till the picture was developed. It looked like a hand with a surgical glove on it. It just zipped by as you see it. There's no flapping of wings, maybe a drone. I have rationalized it away as an unknown. All I know is it's a strange place. There came a point after a few more weeks went by when I was almost completely out of food and had to try to walk the whole distance to the nearest town. To be able to have time to walk that distance, I was eating instant mashed potato mix right out of the box. Also, just for a change, I did the same with pancake mix. I had lost interest in cooking it days before, and time was important now, so I ate like that as I walked. Finally, on my last attempt, I got a ride, but it was for only 2 miles. Nevertheless, I made a new friend, Jeff Cook, a tree faller, and after telling him my story about my injury and why I was there, he understood what I was up to and promised to give me a ride if he ran across me walking again. His was the first real human voice I had heard 3 months or more. It was overwhelming. It was an overwhelming feeling. I can't even describe it. I was experiencing something like I knew I existed again. I knew I could make it to town even on my own now. I could now resupply myself if need be. Right now I had a 20 on me, but the next time I would have to pawn something or sell something. So I talked to people about that at the store. I would make it to town around 4 o'clock, give or take an hour. I would start up at sunup, and right before sundown, I would head back. By sunup or later the next day, I would make it back in my camp. It was a long and grueling ordeal, but each time I did that, it made me stronger. The walk back at night was scary, and I knew I was vulnerable, but there came a point where I didn't care anymore. I had no idea what my next move would be, and I didn't have much of a plan either. During my first trip to town, as I said, I talked to somebody at the grocery store, and they pointed me to the person who I was told to go see for money, and they said that he would buy my stuff or pawn it. When I finally was in front of him, I sensed that he felt a little sorry for me. He was a good man and a Christian, and he started helping me down the right path at that moment. The clerk in the store told me that he helped out many people. He also helped the miners by purchasing the gold that they found for the cash that they desperately needed to subsist on. He really didn't need or want any of my stuff, and probably not from many of the locals, so I knew that he did this out of the kindness of his heart. My camera was the first item gone after I saved the film. Then later my fishing gear, a hunting knife, and a few things that I didn't need I let go. I could buy just enough food for 5 days or so with what I got each time I did this. I would have to do that quite a few times. His name is Claude. After about the third or fourth time of going to him, he offered me a job so I could come out of the woods and live in town since winter was soon approaching. It was about middle of September when I said yes to his offer. I also knew that Mickey and Jerry had a great deal to do with it, as they perceived me as someone on the brink of starvation and hobbled. It was the older women bartenders that worked there for years that I talked to mostly, and Claude respected their opinions. They listened to my story after asking me about my predicament. They listened intently, and I could see their kindness in their eyes. I was given room and board and a few dollars every now and then for small chores. I started a major project that Claude wanted done. The first project was to paint the hotel bar that he owned. The hotel was called the Hayfork Hotel, and it is the center hub of the community. It was a place where jobs were found, and in the past was the county seat. It was about 120 years old at the time. The hotel had a bar in the front, a big ballroom in the back, and a second bar attached to the ballroom, which you can get to from the front bar area. There was a small kitchen attached to the back and side of the ballroom. Upstairs it was a 10-room hotel as I remember it. There was some carpentry to do, like replacing and insulating the window casings and the window sills. Not all the windows, but most of them, and some of the shiplap wood siding needed replacing. I was happy to be there in a room and a roof over my head, and after about a week I started the paint job. And all the while autumn was closing in, it was extremely pleasant and comfortable to work in that environment. The thing that was most mesmerizing at that elevation in town was the clarity of the stars at night. I had soon forgotten about the strange things I had witnessed out in the woods. and had not gone back there yet to get my tent and my other camp gear. After wondering a while, I got alone and I was able to buy a motorcycle. My plan was to get the rest of my stuff as soon as the bike was legal. So after that, I decided one evening to return to my campsite because the temperatures started dropping. I knew it would take several trips to retrieve everything, and I knew I would enjoy going there if for nothing else, for solitude. I kind of missed the woods, and it still felt like home. It still felt good to be there somehow. It was a place away from the humdrum of society. As I rode around learning the roads on my motorcycle, I could sense this land's goodness with the fresh smells in the air and its changing look of the season's influence upon the surrounding land, showing its beauty in the oaks and madrone trees with their changing leaves of multicolors everywhere, between the conifers and the rocky gray and black terrains, sometimes with crystal springs of water running down some of those spots, showing between the trees every now and then. Those changes were stunning in their beauty, with leaves in flight from the gusts of wind and the conifers that displayed their piney essence throughout the breezes, which seemed to purify the air in cool crispness of pine scent, all while making this part of the world clean again at the same time with the changes. Next, Chapter 4. I'm sorry if I stumble once in a while. I'm kind of blind in one eye. It's hard to see print.